before your feet hit the floor, there's a small negotiation happening in your head. Should I get up now or stay another 5 minutes? Should I work out today or take a rest day? Should I start the hard thing first or ease into the morning with something easier? Each question feels small. The negotiation feels normal. You don't even think of it as a negotiation. It just feels like part of waking up. And here's the truth. That negotiation is what's destroying your discipline, not the big decisions, not the lack of motivation, not the demands of your life. The small daily negotiations happening in the first minutes of your morning, before your brain is even properly online. Those are quietly determining the trajectory of your day, and by extension, the trajectory of your life. You see, you have set the morning negotiations up to fail. The version of you who's doing the negotiating is the worst possible version to be making decisions. You're tired, you're foggy, your willpower is at its lowest. Your discipline muscle hasn't engaged yet. You're being asked to make choices about effort and discomfort by a version of you who has no capacity to choose discomfort at that moment. The disciplined people you've watched, the ones who seem to consistently do the things they say they'll do, aren't winning the morning negotiation. They're not in the negotiation at all. They figured out somewhere along the way that the negotiation itself is the problem. And they removed it from their lives. Listen, today I want to walk you through 5 things you have to understand about this. By the end, you'll see exactly why your mornings have been going the way they've been going. And you'll see exactly what to do starting tonight to never have the morning negotiation again. Listen, this is one of the most important shifts an ambitious adult can make. The mornings determine the days determine the years, and the years determine who you become. Get the mornings right, and almost everything else starts working. Get them wrong year after year, and the rest stays stuck. Now, before we get into the 5 things, you must understand what the morning negotiations are costing you, accumulated over years. Because each one feels harmless on the day. They aren't harmless. The cumulative cost is what's been determining your entire trajectory. Here's the truth. Every morning you negotiate and lose, you don't just lose that day's discipline. You lose a small piece of your trust in yourself. The piece is tiny. You barely notice it. But after 1,000 of those mornings, you've eroded the foundation of your relationship with your own promises. You no longer believe you'll do the things you say you'll do because mostly you don't. And the lost trust in yourself is the most expensive cost of the daily negotiations. Because everything you might build in your life, every meaningful pursuit you might commit to, depends on being able to trust your own commitments. When that trust is gone, you stop committing to big things. You play small. You aim for the things you're sure you can deliver because you no longer trust yourself with the things that would require sustained discipline. You see, the morning negotiations also set the tone for the entire day that follows. The day you started by negotiating and losing produces predictably more negotiations and more losses throughout the day. You're already in negotiation mode. The pattern continues. The disciplined task at 10 a.m. also becomes a negotiation. The hard conversation at 2 p.m. becomes a negotiation. By the end of the day, you've negotiated dozens of times, and you've lost most of them. And the day has produced almost nothing of the work you actually wanted to do. And the days compound. After a year of mornings that started with lost negotiations, you've had 365 days that played out roughly the same way, full of small avoidances, small concessions to discomfort, small wins for the easier path. Over a decade, that's most of your adult life. And the person you've become by the end of that decade is somebody whose discipline muscle has atrophied to the point where the big things you used to dream about feel completely out of reach. You must take this seriously. The morning negotiation is not a small thing. It is the foundational lever of your daily life. Get it right, and everything downstream starts to work. Get it wrong year after year, and everything downstream stays small. 5 facets, all about removing the negotiation from your mornings forever. Starting tonight, not tomorrow morning. The first thing you must see clearly is that you've set the morning negotiation up in a way that guarantees you lose. The version of you who's doing the negotiating at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. is the worst possible version of you to be making disciplined decisions. The deck is stacked. You're going to lose. The only question is, by how much on any given morning? You see, the negotiating self in the morning is a version of you that has almost none of your daytime capacities. The willpower hasn't woken up yet. The frontal lobe is still warming up. The body wants to keep sleeping. The bed is warm. The room is comfortable. The temperature outside the covers feels punishing by comparison, and you're asking this version of yourself to choose discomfort. The choice is going to go against discomfort almost every time. And the other party in the negotiation, the part of you that wants discipline, also isn't working at full capacity in those minutes. The part of you that cares about the long-term version of your life is barely audible. It's competing with the immediate sensory pleasure of the warm bed. The competition isn't fair. The long-term voice has nothing to offer in the moment that's as compelling as the immediate comfort. Here's the truth. I'm telling you, most people lose this negotiation by setting it up at all. They think the morning is when discipline is supposed to be tested. It isn't. The morning is when discipline is supposed to be executed. The testing, the deciding should have happened the night before, when you were a different version of yourself, with different resources available for making the choice. You see, this is the entire trick disciplined people figured out. They don't try to win the morning negotiation. They don't have it. The decision was made yesterday. The morning is just doing what was already decided. The version of you who decided was clear-eyed, awake, committed. The version of you executing in the morning doesn't have to decide anything. Just follow the instructions left by yesterday's clearer self. And here's what happens when you stop running the negotiation. The morning becomes radically simpler. The alarm goes off. You get up. You do what you decided to do. No internal argument. No back and forth. No bargaining with yourself for 10 more minutes. The execution is automatic because the deciding already happened. This shift from morning negotiation to morning execution is the single biggest discipline upgrade most people can make. And it doesn't require more willpower. It requires less negotiation. You cannot keep spending willpower this way. The willpower you've been spending on the morning argument, usually losing, gets freed up for the execution. And the execution, no longer fighting an internal argument, happens cleanly. You must stop putting yourself in the position of having to negotiate at 6 a.m. The negotiation was always going to go badly. The version of you that negotiates at that hour isn't equipped to win. Remove the negotiation and the losing stops. And the discipline you've been struggling to build starts becoming who you are. The second thing you have to understand is that every negotiation, whether you win it or lose it, erodes your identity as a disciplined person. Because the very act of negotiating tells your brain that the disciplined behavior is optional, that it's up for debate, that it's something to be considered each morning, rather than something that just happens. You see, Identity is built through repetition, without question. The person who runs every morning isn't running because they win the daily debate about running. They're running because, for them, there's no debate. The running is just what happens in the morning. The decision was made long ago. At some point, they decided they were a runner, and every morning since then has been the execution of that identity, not a fresh question about whether to run today. And here's the truth. The moment you allow a negotiation about whether to do the discipline thing, you've told your brain that you aren't yet the kind of person who does that thing. The negotiation is the signal that the identity hasn't formed. And as long as the negotiation continues, the identity doesn't form. The behavior stays effortful because it stays a choice, because the choice keeps being negotiated each morning. The way out is to refuse the negotiation on principle until the behavior becomes automatic enough that no negotiation arises. The first weeks are hard. The negotiating impulse is strong. But every morning you refuse the negotiation and just execute, you weaken the negotiation muscle and strengthen the execution muscle. After a few months, the negotiation stops arising at all. The behavior has become identity. You see, this is also why winning the morning negotiation by sheer willpower is not actually a victory. Yes, you got out of bed today. You worked out today. You did the hard thing today, but you did it as somebody who had to fight themselves to do it. The fighting's the problem. Every morning you fight and win is a morning that proves the identity hasn't yet locked in. And the fighting, repeated daily, is exhausting in a way that the no negotiation execution isn't. You gotta aim higher than winning the morning negotiation. Aim for no morning negotiation at all. The bar is not, did I push through and do it? The bar is, did I do it without needing to push through? The no push-through version is what disciplined people have. The push-through version is what people who are still building discipline have. The push-through is necessary for a while, but the destination is the no push-through. Every time you execute without negotiating, you become slightly more of the person who doesn't negotiate. Every time you negotiate, even if you win, you stay slightly the kind of person who has to negotiate. The identity is built by the choice not to engage in the negotiation, not by the choice that the negotiation eventually produces. Over years, the identity is what carries you, not the willpower. The third thing is the actual mechanics of how to stop the morning negotiation. Because you cannot just decide in the moment to stop negotiating. The negotiation arises automatically when there's a decision to make. The only way to remove the negotiation is to remove the decision, which means making the decision earlier by a different version of yourself when there's nothing to negotiate against. You see, disciplined people pre-decide the night before, the week before, sometimes the year before. They make the decision once, fully, with the part of themselves that's clear-headed and committed. And then they execute repeatedly without redeciding each time. The pre-deciding works because the pre-deciding version of you is competent to make disciplined decisions. You're awake, you're alert. You're not staring at a warm bed and a cold morning. You're sitting in a chair with no immediate sensory pressure pulling you away from discipline. And you can think clearly about what the disciplined version of you would do and commit to doing it. Here's the truth. The pre-decision binds the morning version of you. When the alarm goes off, the decision isn't, should I get up? The decision is, am I going to honor what last night's version of me committed to? And the question of honoring a commitment is a different question than the question of choosing discomfort fresh. The honoring question is easier to win because the person you'd be letting down, yesterday's clearer self, feels real, and abandoning their commitment feels like a small betrayal. You must adopt this mechanic. You got to take 3 minutes each night before bed to pre-decide tomorrow morning. You write it down or say it out loud. The alarm is set for 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., I get up. By 6:15, I'm at the desk. From 6:15 to 7, I work on the project. At 7, I shower. By 7:30, the morning is done. The whole sequence, pre-decided. And you have to remember this. The next morning, when the alarm goes off, the question is settled. You're not deciding whether to get up. You're executing what was already decided. The decision isn't in play. The negotiation has nothing to negotiate over. And so the negotiation simply doesn't happen. You get up, you execute. The morning unfolds the way it was designed to unfold. You must adopt this practice. Tonight, before bed, you pre-decide tomorrow morning. Write it down. Make it specific. Make it clear. Tomorrow morning, you do what was decided. You don't engage in any internal back and forth. The back and forth has nothing to engage with. The decision is locked. You must run this for a week, then a month, then a year. The morning negotiations, which used to eat the first 30 minutes of your day in a quiet internal argument, simply stop arising. The space they occupied gets filled by execution. The execution produces the work. The work, accumulated over time, produces the life. The fourth thing I want you to see is what happens to the rest of the day after you've changed how the morning goes. Because the morning isn't just one part of the day. It's the part that sets the tone for everything that comes after. The morning that started with a lost negotiation produces a day full of lost negotiations. The morning that started with clean execution produces a day full of clean execution. You see, the patterns you run in the first hour of your day continue running throughout the day. If you got out of bed by negotiating and losing, your brain has registered that negotiating and losing is what you do today. The discipline task at 10 a.m. becomes a negotiation. The hard email at noon becomes a negotiation. The workout at 6 p.m. becomes a negotiation. And by the end of the day, you've negotiated 30 times and lost most of them. And the day has produced almost nothing. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He was in his late 30s. He was trying to build a side business in the early mornings before his regular job. He set his alarm for 5 a.m. every day. He had been doing this, or more accurately, trying to do this, for about 6 months by the time I met him. The alarm went off at 5 every morning, and every morning he hit snooze. Then he hit snooze again. Then he negotiated with himself for 10 or 15 minutes about whether to get up at all. Sometimes he won the negotiation, got up at 5:30, and got maybe 20 minutes of work on the business before he had to start getting ready for his regular day. Most mornings, he lost the negotiation entirely, slept until 6:30, and got nothing done on the business. After 6 months, the side business had barely moved. He had logged maybe 15 hours total of focused work on it across all those mornings. He was confused because he wanted it badly. He kept telling himself he was committed. He read books about discipline. He set his alarm earlier, hoping that would help. It didn't help. The alarm just got hit earlier. A friend of his pointed out something that stopped him cold. The friend said, "You're not failing at discipline. You're not even getting to the point of discipline. You're failing at the negotiation that comes before discipline." Every morning, you're having an argument with yourself about whether to get up. The argument is the problem. Stop having the argument. He didn't know what that meant at first. Then his friend explained, pre-decide. The night before, you commit fully to what tomorrow morning looks like. You write it down, you say it out loud. You tell yourself the decision is made. And in the morning, you just execute what was already decided. There's nothing to negotiate because the negotiation already happened last night. He tried it. The first night he wrote on a piece of paper, tomorrow at 5 a.m., I get up. By 5:15, I'm at the desk. From 5:15 to 6:15, I work on the business. The decision is made. No redeciding tomorrow. He put the paper next to his bed and went to sleep. The next morning, the alarm went off. He noticed the negotiating impulse rising, the warm bed, the temptation to snooze. But the paper was right there. The decision was made. He didn't engage with the negotiation. He got up. He went to the desk. He worked on the business for an hour. The morning unfolded exactly as he had written. He did it again the next morning, and the next. Within a month, the morning had transformed. The negotiation had stopped arising. He just got up and worked on the business every morning because the decision was always made the night before. Within a year, the side business was real. Within 2 years, it was generating real income. Within 4 years, it had replaced his regular job. None of that would have been possible if he had kept negotiating each morning. The change wasn't more willpower. It was the removal of the morning negotiation that had been quietly killing the entire pursuit. The fifth thing, and this reframes the whole concept of discipline, is that discipline isn't what most people think it is. Most people think discipline is the ability to push through, force yourself, make yourself do the hard thing. That's not discipline. That's effortful motivation. And effortful motivation, as you've experienced, doesn't last. You see, real discipline is something different. It's the absence of negotiation. Disciplined people aren't pushing through anything in the morning. They aren't fighting themselves. They aren't winning daily battles against their lower self. They're just executing what was decided. The decision was made elsewhere at a different time, and the execution happens cleanly because there's no internal opposition to it. And here's the truth. This is why motivation is such a poor strategy for building a disciplined life. Motivation is what you need when you're still negotiating. It's the fuel that wins the negotiation. But you can run out of fuel. You can have low motivation days. And on those days with no fuel to win the negotiation, you lose and the discipline falls apart. Discipline that doesn't require motivation is a fundamentally different structure. The decision is permanent. The execution is automatic. There's no negotiation to win, and so no fuel required to win it. You can have a low motivation day and still execute, because executing doesn't depend on motivation in the moment. It depends only on the prior decision and the absence of any new negotiation about it. You got to build your discipline this way, not by trying to be more motivated, by removing the moments where motivation would be required. Pre-decide, eliminate the negotiation, make the execution the default. And then notice, over weeks and months, that your discipline holds even on days you don't feel motivated, because motivation was never the variable. This is why disciplined people, viewed from the outside, often look unimpressed by their own consistency. They don't feel heroic. They aren't grinding. They're just doing what they always do. The work is automatic. The discipline has become identity. And identity doesn't require daily motivation to maintain. But here's what most people miss. The path to that kind of discipline is not through more force. It's through better structure. Set up your life so the negotiations don't arise. Pre-decide as much as possible. Automate everything that can be automated. Remove the daily decisions so the daily execution can happen without internal resistance. Over time, the structure produces the discipline. The discipline produces the work. The work produces the life. And none of it required heroic motivation. It required a different setup, installed once, run for years. You can install that setup tonight, starting with pre-deciding tomorrow morning. The first night is the beginning of the structural shift that, over years, replaces effortful motivation with effortless discipline. So here's the inversion you must make. Stop trying to win the morning negotiation. Stop trying to be more motivated. Stop trying to push through harder. Those strategies haven't been working for you, and they won't start working because they are pointed at the wrong target. The right target is the negotiation itself. Remove the negotiation and the loss disappears. You can't lose the negotiation that didn't happen. You got to pre-decide. That's the way to keep the negotiation from happening at a time and in a state of mind that's actually competent to make the decision. The mechanics, once more, simply. Every night before bed, you take 3 minutes to pre-decide tomorrow morning. You write it down. You say it out loud. You commit fully with the part of yourself that's clear and awake. Every single day, the first hour gets decided. Tomorrow morning is decided. There's nothing left to negotiate. The next morning when the alarm goes off, you don't decide anything. You execute. The execution doesn't require willpower in the same way that winning a negotiation requires willpower. It just requires the simple act of doing what was already decided. The alarm, the bed, the desk, the work. In the sequence you wrote down, no internal argument, no back and forth, no bargaining. This is going to feel strange at first. You've spent years allowing the morning negotiation to happen. The absence of the negotiation will feel almost suspicious, like you're missing a step. You're not missing anything. The step you used to do was the negotiation. Removing it leaves a cleaner morning, where the things that needed to happen actually happen. And after a month of running this practice, you'll notice something. Your discipline isn't being tested anymore. It's just operating. The pre-decisions made the night before are being executed in the morning, almost automatically. And the rest of your day, set up by mornings that started clean, runs differently too. The patterns of execution carry through. The patterns of negotiation never get established. You can apply this beyond just the morning. You must pre-decide. The workout you'll do that day. Pre-decide the hard conversation. Pre-decide the focused work block. Each one, decided in advance by a clearer version of you, gets executed in real time by the version of you who's actually in the moment. The negotiations stop arising across the day. The execution gets cleaner. The work accumulates. That's the whole reframe. Discipline is not what you do in the moment. Discipline is what you pre-decided, which the in-moment version of you then executes. Make the decisions when you're clear. Execute the decisions whenever the time comes. The two are different acts performed by different versions of yourself, and they should not be conflated. So here is what I want you to carry with you. The morning negotiations you've been having for years have been quietly destroying your discipline, your trust in yourself, and the trajectory of your life. They are not harmless. They are the foundational lever that has been working against you every single day for as long as you can remember. And the fix is not more willpower. The fix is removing the negotiation, which you do by pre-deciding the night before. With the part of yourself that's actually equipped to make disciplined decisions, then the morning version of you just executes what was decided. No argument, no fight. No fresh decision-making at a moment when you're not equipped to make decisions. Start tonight. Before bed, take 3 minutes. Write down exactly what tomorrow morning looks like. The alarm time, the first action, the sequence after that. Say it out loud. Commit to it. Put the paper somewhere. You'll see it when you wake up. Tomorrow morning, you don't decide anything. You execute. The alarm goes off. You get up. You follow the sequence you wrote down. If the negotiating impulse arises, and it will the first few mornings, you don't engage with it. The decision was already made. There is nothing to negotiate. You execute. I'm telling you, this single practice, run for a year, will produce more discipline change than any motivational system, any productivity book, any willpower technique you have ever tried, because it's not asking you to do more. It's asking you to negotiate less. And the negotiation was always the problem, not the willpower. You must trust the process. Within a month, the mornings will start to feel different. Within 3 months, the pattern of execution will be locked in. Within a year, you'll have become somebody whose discipline operates without internal resistance. The work that requires that kind of discipline, the projects, the goals, the dreams, will start to become reachable because the foundation is finally there. Every single day, the disciplined people you've watched have all done some version of this. They aren't winning daily battles. They aren't grinding through arguments with themselves. They are executing pre-decisions, calmly, without negotiation. You can be one of them, starting tonight, with a paper next to the bed. With tomorrow morning already decided, with the version of you who shows up at the alarm, having nothing to argue with, only execute. Every single day from now on, you wake up and execute. No internal negotiation, no daily debate, just the calm carrying out of what last night's clearer version of you already decided. That is the discipline you've been trying to build for years. It's available starting tonight. You don't have to be more motivated. You just have to negotiate less. You cannot keep waiting on a different version of you to show up in the morning. That version was never coming. The decision has to come from yesterday's you, the awake one. The execution comes from today's you, the calm one. Get the handoff right, and the discipline becomes inevitable. Get it wrong every morning, and the discipline never builds. Choose tonight.